Thank you for being here this morning. We'll start by singing that song, I'm Bound for the Promised Land. It's song number... You don't see it in the book? That's all right. She's got, let's sing song 311, This World Is Not My Home. I'm just passing through song 311. She may not have that one in the book. How about song 330? Are you... Okay. It's that or song 330, Are You Washed in the Blood of the Lamb? Whichever one you want. 311, we'll see. All right. This world is not my home. Here we go together. This world is not my home, I'm just a passing through. My treasures are laid up somewhere beyond the blue. The angels beckon me from heaven's open door, and I can't feel at home in this world anymore. Oh Lord, you know I have no friend like you. If heaven's not my home, then Lord, what will I do? The angels beckon me from heaven's open door, and I can't feel at home in this world anymore. That was pretty good. That was pretty good. She underestimates herself. Let's sing that last verse, song 311. Just up in glory land we'll live eternally. The saints on every hand are shouting victory. Their songs of sweetest praise drift back from heaven's shore, and I can't feel at home in this world anymore. Oh Lord, you know I have no friend like you. If heaven's not my home, then Lord, what will I do? The angels beckon me from heaven's open door, and I can't feel at home in this world anymore. Very good. Thank you for playing, and thank you for singing. We're going to be in Joshua chapter number 3. Joshua chapter number 3. Joshua chapter number 3. Then, if you want to pick a second spot to go to, it would be Numbers chapter 32. I try to make it easy on you for flipping back and forth, but Numbers chapter 32, Joshua chapter 3, Numbers chapter 32. I'll give a little bit of an overview where we're at, where we've been, and then where we're going today, all right? So we've been talking about Joshua, lessons from the life of Joshua. This is lesson number 4. So far what we've covered is Joshua figuring out who he is and kind of his background. And lesson number 1, maybe the most interesting fact that I pulled out from lesson number 1 is Joshua spent more time as a slave in Egypt till he was 40 years old than he did as a leader. We always think of Joshua as the mighty, courageous leader. Joshua spent more time as a slave in Egypt than he did as a leader. He was a leader for about 23 years, but he was a slave for 40, and he spent 40 years in the wilderness, not even from any decision or faithlessness on his own. It was because the other 10 spies, they brought an evil report, they stirred up the people, and they didn't go into the promised land. So Joshua spent 80 years of his life as a slave and in the wilderness, but only 23 years of his life as the great leader that we esteem him as. And we just kind of talked about some of those principles. The fear that we have or create in our mind, a lot of times we end up dying looking at the things that we were most afraid of happening anyways. We think of Pharaoh. Pharaoh was so afraid that the children of Israel were going to leave, right? He hardened his heart. He wouldn't, no matter what God brought his way, he would not soften his heart. But ultimately, Pharaoh literally died watching the Israelites go across the Red Sea and the waves coming in on him. What Pharaoh was most afraid of, he died watching happen anyway. And the children of Israel, they were afraid to go into the Canaan land and die, right, by the hands of the giants. Well, guess what? They ended up dying anyways. They wandered around for 40 years. And the Lord said, your carcasses are going to die in the wilderness. So the thing they were most afraid of happened anyways. And the principle that we kind of pulled out there is I would rather die at the sword of my enemies doing what God asked us to do rather than to die wandering, not doing what God has purpose for us to do. Then we talked about Joshua's first victory, how he fought Amalek. And biggest principle that I gather from that is Christianity is not a solo sport. There are no super soldiers or super Christians. We are all flesh and blood, and God didn't design us that way. That's why he gave us the body. He said, as the body hath many members, so is Christ. He's the head. We don't get to decide who the head is, but then he fitly joins the body together. You cannot defeat your enemies by yourself because God didn't design you. You can't defeat discouragement. You can't defeat whatever it is by yourself. He never designed us to do that. It's not you versus the world. It's the body versus the enemy, okay? Then last week we talked about on the edge of the promised land. On the edge of the promised land. They were getting ready to go in, and some of the same things were going to start happening. People were wondering if they should or they shouldn't, and Joshua needed some encouragement. And we talked about, I think it was 7 or 8 ways that Joshua was encouraged. He was encouraged by the Lord himself. He was encouraged by Moses. Moses had a great opportunity for evil and for good. No one was going to be able to lead like Moses. That was just a fact. All throughout the history of Israel, even to this day, they revere Moses, David, and Abraham as their fathers. Moses was maybe the greatest leader that Israel had or ever would have. But Moses had an opportunity to either be frustrated that he couldn't go into the promised land, look down at Joshua and like, oh, yeah, good luck, little buddy. You know, you're not going to be as good as me, but good luck. No, he encouraged Joshua. He said, Joshua, don't be afraid. The same God that delivered us from the hand of Egypt, that brought us through the wilderness, it's the same God that's going to go with you. And you will go and take the promised land, the land that was swear to our fathers. So he encouraged him. He was encouraged by victories. He was encouraged by promises. We talked about all that last week. This week, here we're at. We're ready to cross Jordan. That's the title of this message would be Ready to Cross Jordan. Joshua chapter 3, verses 1 through 3. And Joshua rose early in the morning. He was ready. It's like opening a deer season. Like you go to bed and you don't sleep, you just wait for morning, okay? He was excited. He was ready to cross Jordan. He rose up early in the morning and there removed from Shittim and came to Jordan, he and all the congregation of Israel, and they lodged there before they passed over. And it came to pass after 3 days, the officers went through the host, and they commanded the people, saying, when ye see the ark of the covenant of the Lord your God, and the priests, the Levites, bearing it, then shall you remove from your place and go after it. I'm going to pray, and we'll get into this. Heavenly Father, I ask that you would help us to put everything aside, all of our distractions, all of our worries, all of our cares. I ask that you would help us to focus on what you have for us this morning. I ask that you would be with those that are not with us, whether sickness, away, health, travel, whatever it is. I ask that you would bear them up in your arms, encourage them, strengthen them. If they watch later, I ask that you would move in their hearts as you are in ours this morning. Open our eyes to see your truth. Fill us with your Spirit. We ask it in your name. Amen. It was time to go. Joshua, Caleb, and all the Israelites, they had waited 40 years for this moment. They had been at this exact spot once before. And actually, Joshua had been across the river once before already. They had been here before. And under Joshua's leadership, they were no longer going to walk in fear. They were going to walk by faith. Well, what we'll see is most of them would. So first of all, following the leader. Up to this point, Joshua had proven himself in battle. We talked about that. Joshua was obedient to Moses' command. Moses said, hey, put together an army. You got 1 day. He did it. He was obedient. He was faithful. He proved himself as a man of God. He proved himself as God's anointed leader. The priest, Eleazar, put hands on Joshua, prayed over him, asked the Lord to bless him. The Lord himself told Joshua and Moses that he was going to be the leader. Moses anointed him as leader. There was no doubt that Joshua was the anointed leader for this time. But Israel, listen, Israel was not instructed to follow Joshua. Let's read verse number 3 again. And they, the Israelites, the captains, they commanded the people, saying, when ye see the ark of the covenant of the Lord your God, and the priests, the Levites, bearing it, then ye shall remove from your place and go after it. They were never instructed to follow Joshua. And what we will see in Joshua's tenure as leader, the people did not follow Joshua. Joshua said, I'm serving the Lord. Me and my family, we're serving the Lord. And it doesn't matter if you are or not, we're serving the Lord. Joshua, his example of leadership was fellowship. He was just the lead sheep. He wasn't the shepherd. And as pastors, that's our job. My job is not to lead the sheep. I am just the lead sheep. And I encourage, like Paul says, follow me as I follow Christ. Because ultimately, I'm not the leader. He is. There's only one shepherd, and it's him. The Lord is my shepherd. They were instructed not to follow Joshua. They were instructed to follow the Ark of the Covenant. Okay, what did this represent? We're going to look at this real quick. The Ark was more than just a golden box full of trinkets, okay? For the foreseeable future, all the way up until the captivity of Babylon, that's another study for another time, we see the Ark of the Covenant. Sometimes the Ark of the Covenant would be misused, mistreated. Bad things would happen. That's the Philistines at the time of David. Sometimes the Ark of the Covenant would be miscarried. Somebody would touch it or put their hands on it, and they're Gonzalo Washington. But the Ark of the Covenant represented a few things. It wasn't just a golden box full of trinkets. First, we'll see in verse 9 and 10 of chapter 3, it was a resemblance of the presence of God. First, the Ark of the Covenant was a resemblance of the presence of God. Verse number 9, and Joshua said to the children of Israel, come hither and hear the words of the Lord your God. And Joshua said, hereby ye shall know that he, the living God, is among you. There's more that goes into that verse, but we'll stop there. God divinely designed the ark as a place for his presence to dwell. He designed the tabernacle as a temporary house for his presence to dwell within the ark. He instructed Israel not only to take the ark with them, but to follow the ark. God was not their tag-along, okay? You would see this in the life of Saul. There was a couple times where they went into battle and they lost. Oh, we forgot to bring the ark with us, so they went and fetched the ark. They brought the ark along with them, and guess what? They still lost. And the Philistines took the ark. The ark was never supposed to be a good luck charm or a tag-along. The ark wasn't just an object. It wasn't the rabbit's foot for Israel. God designed the ark as a place for him to dwell. If we were to look in Exodus at how God designed the ark with the cherubims and he would rest in between them, God wanted to dwell with Israel. And he wanted to dwell with Israel so badly that he designed kind of a crude structure in the tabernacle and a box where he said, if you do everything that I ask, exactly the way that I ask, down to the nails, down to the wood, down to everything, my presence will dwell with you. Because he wanted to test their obedience. Why was the ark constructed so meticulously in the altar and the tabernacle? God wanted to see if they were serious. The Lord's business is serious. And a lot of times with us, he asks us to do things that maybe it's like, man, that's kind of, what do we say? That's ticky-tack. That's kind of, God wants to see if you're willing to obey, not only in the big things, but in the little things. And the Ark of the Covenant was that. Not just how they constructed it, how they treated it, if they followed it, or if they brought it along with them. The Ark of the Covenant was a picture of the presence of God, and literally, God's presence dwelt there. And for us, when we are talking about the presence of God, God is not our tag-along. God is not a good luck charm. Hey, I'm going to go do this. God bless my adventure when I go out and do whatever it is. The ark was always supposed to be followed. It was never supposed to be brought along with them. First, you see that it is a representation of the presence of God. It was a representation of the promises of God. As the history of Israel would go, there was times where Israel would forget the ark, right? And it wouldn't be long after a dreadful defeat that the Israelites would realize, oh, we forgot something. It wasn't just that they forgot the ark. They forgot God in their adventure, okay? And there are times in our lives where we'll find ourselves so busy, so caught up with life and circumstances that we literally sometimes we just bring ourselves to a halt and think, when's the last time that I asked God for help in this area? When's the last time I submitted myself to him in prayer? When's the last time, instead of saying, Lord, bless whatever I'm about to do, we said, Lord, how about you show me what I'm supposed to do? You go before me. Because he promised that he would never leave us. He promised that he will always be with us. But sometimes we get so busy, we turn and go away from God. He didn't move, but we did. So the ark was a representation of his promises. God never failed Israel, not one time. Well, why did Israel face defeat? Well, a lot of times it's because they walked away from the promises of God, and they found themselves in trouble. God didn't move, Israel did. So the ark was a representation of his presence, but also of his promises. What was inside the ark? And this is number 3. The ark was a representation of God's provision. In Hebrews chapter 9, verse 4 and 5, you don't have to turn there. The writer of Hebrews, allegedly Paul, he gives us just a quick breakdown of what's inside the ark. The ark of the covenant overlaid round about with gold, wherein was the golden pot that had manna, and Aaron's rod that budded, and the tablets of the covenant, what we would call the 10 Commandments. What was this a representation of? The golden pot was how God had provided for them in the wilderness. That was something that they were going to carry around for them for the rest of their nation's history. Because when there was literally no way in the wilderness, God made a way. Aaron's rod that budded, long story short, is a picture of God's immaculate timing and his faithfulness. There was murmuring of who was supposed to lead, who wasn't supposed to lead. So they took 12 rods, and whoever rod bloomed and budded, that is who God had divinely designated to lead the Levites, to lead, and ultimately it was Aaron. Aaron's rod budded. It showed God's faithfulness to his people, even when they murmured, and God's immaculate timing. Also, the tablets of the covenant. That was a picture, Old Testament, of a covenant that he made with his people. The tablets of the covenant were not just a rule book to be followed. It was God saying, this is my end of the bargain that I will hold up. Here's your end of the bargain. If you hold it up, we're going to have a good relationship. It's like a marriage covenant. If you hold up your end, I'll hold up my end. It's going to be beautiful. I'm always going to hold up my end, and if you fail on your end, here's what's going to happen. And he was right. For us, what is if we, when we say we don't follow the ark, but if we were to follow the ark, we move when God moves. We move only when God moves. The covenant that he made us in Jesus Christ, we don't forget his covenant. That's why we have Lord's Supper. He says, as often as you do it, do this in remembrance of me, because he made a covenant with us. While we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. His body, which was broken for us, and his blood, which was shed for remission of sin. That is how we remember God. That's how we remember his covenant to us. That's how we remember his sacrifice. That's one of the 2 things that we call ordinances that he instructed us to do. Baptism, which is a picture of his death, burial, and resurrection, and the Lord's Supper, how his body and his blood was shed for us, and that is his covenant. So the Ark of the Covenant represent the presence of God, the promises of God, and the provision of God. The Ark was filled with reminders of how God not only had, but he would miraculously provide for them. So here's where this is the first part. When they go to cross the river Jordan, they weren't following Joshua right from the start. They were not going to follow Joshua. In their first battle, the ark went first, went around the walls. Every battle, God would go first, because God told Moses and God told Joshua, he said, I will fight for you. Not I will fight alongside you. I will fight for you in your stead. God did not need a mighty leader. We said this before. God did not need a mighty leader, a mighty warrior to lead Israel into the promised land. He just needed an obedient one, and that was Joshua. And how God wanted it is the ark goes first. So the ark went first across the Jordan. We're going to look at this, shift gears just a little bit. The first part was following the leader, capital L. But number 2 is staying behind. Joshua was ready to go. The priests were ready. The ark was ready. Nearly everyone was ready. But there was still a group of people after 40 years that were not ready to go. Go to Numbers chapter 32. This is where we spend the second half of this lesson. Numbers 32, verse number 1. Now the children of Reuben and the children of Gad had a very great multitude of cattle. And when they saw the land of Jazer and the land of Gilead, they beheld the place was a place for cattle, meaning they're near the river, there's green grass, you're in the wilderness, so place where there's fertile land, green grass, water source, that's an ideal place for cattle. Verse number 2, the children of Gad and the children of Reuben, they came and spake unto Moses and to Eleazar the priest and the princes of the congregation, saying, Adaroth and Dibon and Jazer and Nimrah and Heshbon and Elealeh and Shabam and Nebo and Beon, even the country which the Lord hath smote before the congregation of Israel, is a land for cattle. All these different little tribes and different little cities on this side of Jordan, not that side, on this side of Jordan, he said, is a land for cattle. And they make a wise observation at the end of verse 4, and thy servants have cattle. This is a land for cattle, and we have cattle. Like Moses, do you see it? 2 and 2, okay? I have cattle, and this is a good spot for cattle. Verse number 5, wherefore they said, if we have found grace in thy sight, let this land be given unto thy servants for a possession, and bring us not over Jordan. This was a call for comfort. They were close enough to the promised land. That land was good enough. They didn't have to fight any more battles. They had cattle, and the land was perfect for cattle. As logical and harmless as this decision or this request may have seemed, it was faithless and it was dangerous. So where did this lead? And we're going to get into this. And we are going to make a very strong parallel to Christianity now. The picture of the promised land, the picture of being freed from Egypt, coming across the wilderness, crossing Jordan, which is not crossing from death into life physically. It is like baptism. We are dying to the world, to the flesh, to the wilderness, and we are saying, I go across the Jordan, I rise in newness of life. Are there battles in the promised land? Yeah, there was a lot of battles in the promised land. Are there battles in our spiritual life? Yeah, there's a lot of battles. Sometimes it's easier to not fight than it is to fight. Canaan land is not a picture of heaven. There's no battles in heaven. There was only one battle in heaven, and God won it. It's a picture of the victorious Christian life. When we play by the rules, when we do what God asks, we experience victory. When we do it our own way, we experience defeat every time. What is this a picture of here? These men, they're standing on the edge of the promised land. They're close enough to victorious Christian living. It was comfortable. And they asked Moses, hey, this land is good enough. We don't have to go into victorious Christian living. We don't necessarily want to fight our spiritual battles. We're good with this. This is good enough. I'll show you a few things that this led to. First, it led to the discouragement of others. You had a group of the Israelites, a large group of the Israelites. It was Gad, Reuben, and it ends up being the half tribe of Manasseh. They say, this land over here, this side of Jordan, not the promised land. We want to stay here. One, it discouraged other people. Chapter 32, verses 6 and 7. And Moses said to the children of Gad and to the children of Reuben, shall your brethren go to war, and shall ye sit here? Verse 7, and wherefore discourage ye the hearts of the children of Israel from going over into the land which the Lord had given them? Moses very bluntly points out, so what you're asking is, your brothers, we're going to go across the river. We're going to be led by the Spirit of God. We're going to go fight the spiritual battles, but you're going to stay here in the wilderness. Sure, you're not in Egypt anymore, but you're not going to cross over and fight the spiritual battles with your brothers. He said, why do you discourage us? Why do you discourage your other brothers that are going to go fight? There's a lot of battles that need to be fighting. As we know, it's not a one-man show. Everybody needs to be involved. Moses says, why are you discouraging the hearts of those that do want to go across? It was a time to go, but these faithless men discouraged the hearts of other faithful men around them by craving comfort. They weighed God's will against their desire. They measured faith by their convenience. God asked them to walk by faith, and they chose to walk by sight. In our own hearts and life, we're going to get to the negative and then how we can apply it to ourselves one way or the other. When you choose to walk in fear, when you choose to not fight your spiritual battles, when you choose to not go to war against sin, self, and Satan, you think, you know what? Where I'm at spiritually, it's fine. I've been fighting this fight for so long. Some of you have been in church like 3 times longer than I've even existed. And you've had a long Christian life, and the Lord has blessed, and you've seen Him move, and you know that He can provide miraculously in the wilderness. You've seen all that. But you're good where you're at. What Moses says is that's discouraging. That's discouraging because there's other young men that they're getting ready to cross over, and they're going to go fight. And you're going to discourage them by sitting on the sideline and watching. Or maybe you're just tired. Maybe you're not that old, but you're just tired, and you don't want to fight anymore. And you think, you know what? I'm saved. I'm not in the world, but I'm not going to pick up the sword. I'm just too tired. It is a selfish decision in the sense of maybe it's not even for you. Maybe it's for somebody else that's watching you. You've got children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren. You've got young men in church that are looking up to you. And I don't want to say expect, but they expect of the people that are going to be inconsistent to the Lord's work, of the people that are going to be faithless, they don't expect you. They expect you to lead by example. Hey, I've been in the wilderness. I've seen how God has provided. That's why we're carrying the manna around. That's why we got the tablets in there. That's why we got Aaron's rod in there. We've seen God work miracle after miracle after miracle, and we're going across. Even if I die before I see another victory, I'm still going across the river. Moses said, why are you discouraging the hearts of the other people by staying behind? And we have seen it. Those who have, and I'm not condemning them, but those who have chose to sit on the sidelines while God's work keeps going forward, it's discouraging. As a leader, don't like to use that, but as a leader, you're not frustrated necessarily that, they just need to get on board. No, it's discouraging. You're like, man, I wanted all of us to go across the river. The more the merrier, that's my opinion. The more of us that go across and fight, God's going to fight for us. We're going to all experience blessing. I just want everybody to come along. Moses said, hey, by you guys not going across and fighting, that's discouraging. So it's twofold. One, don't get discouraged by those around. Don't discourage others by being faithless, but also don't get discouraged by others being faithless. The fact of the matter was these men, they did end up going over and fighting. Many of them did. But then at the end of it, they did come back and dwell outside of the promised land. That's the land that they asked for. And sadly, this happens. God gave them exactly what they asked for. So, two sides. One, don't discourage others by being faithless or by being inconsistent or not being willing to go to battle. But then also don't get discouraged. The fact of the matter is, I'm not going to tell you anything you don't know, there are going to be those that aren't going to want to cross Jordan. They're going to be comfortable with salvation. They're good with getting out of Egypt, and that's fine. They've seen God's provision. They've come through the wilderness. They have no reason to doubt, but yet they still choose not to walk in faith, and that's okay. What Joshua understood this principle. He said, as for me and my house, we'll serve the Lord. Meaning, it doesn't matter if, and we are the only ones that go across, I'm going to go across. So you have to make that decision for yourself. You can't always be looking back over Jordan to see who's pitching their tent and not going across. It doesn't matter. Nose down. I heard this morning. When you're in school, you're taking a test or you're doing your work, the teacher would always remind you, hey, eyes on your own paper, right? Don't look next to you or behind you. Eyes on your own paper. That is so true. Eyes on your own paper. Don't get discouraged by those who aren't doing what's right or those who choose to stay behind. Eyes on your own paper. Even if you go alone, just do what God asks you to do and don't get discouraged by those. So, Two sides of the same coin. One, don't discourage others by lagging behind, but also don't get discouraged by those who do lag behind. So what happened? First, I got a little long on that point. I apologize. One, first off, it discouraged others that were going across. Number two, it angered the Almighty. Verse number 14 and 15 of chapter 32. Numbers 32, verse 14 and 15. And behold, ye are risen up in your father's stead, and an increase of sinful men, to augment yet the fierce anger of the Lord towards Israel. For if ye turn away from after him, he will yet again leave them in the wilderness, and ye shall destroy all this people. Moses says in that first part, he says, you are risen up in your father's stead. It was going to happen again. That at the end of verse number 15, that's what Moses says. He says, if you turn away from him again, he will yet again leave you in the wilderness, and your faithlessness will destroy all this people. He's telling them, this is the same song, second verse. We just did this for 40 years. And Moses says, you are literally going to make the Lord angry. Because he waited till that whole faithless generation died, and here we are in the same exact spot, and you're doing it again. As frustrating as it could be, it is God who is the judge, and not me, and it's not you. But you can see where Moses is starting to get agitated or righteously angry. He said, are you guys kidding me that we're going to do this again? God has been so good. Your fathers, you have the same attitude that they had, and you saw what happened to them. He said, you are going to provoke God's anger. It was hereditary. Their fathers murmured. Their fathers walked by sight and fear and looked for reasons to not go into the promised land. And here we are 40 years later. They are doing the exact same thing. Needless to say, the Lord was angry at their lack of faith and lack of obedience. Don't wait until God's second, third, fifth time of asking you to do his purpose before you do it. The Lord will give you second chances, third chances, 100 chance. But you don't have to. You can just obey the first time. You can just walk by faith and not by sight. I am a living testament that God gives second chances or thirds or hundreds. And that it's his grace is greater than our sin. Truly. But you don't have to test God's grace. You can just walk by faith. You can just be obedient. Moses here was frustrated that after 40 years of life lessons, they still walked in fear and not by faith. Number 3, not only they discouraged the hearts of the others, they angered God, but we'll see that not right now, but far down the line, that they were the first ones to fall. Centuries later, Israel starts their downward trend towards captivity. They had 2 captivities down the pipe after all these wicked kings come through. This is way later after this. They have Syrian captivity. They fall into the hands of Assyria, which is warned by the prophets. Then they fall ultimately to Babylonian captivity, which during Babylonian captivity, they destroyed everything. They destroyed the temple. They destroyed the walls. They destroyed everything. That's why Nehemiah had to go back and build it. But the first one, Assyrian captivity, it was mostly to Israel, not Judah, which was split kingdom at the time. Guess who were the first tribes to fall? Reuben, Gad, and half-tribe of Manasseh, because they were on this side of Jordan. How many times do we see people fall? They fall. You couldn't even find them in church. You couldn't even pay them to get to church. Again, I'm not condemning or beating them up. This is just facts. We've seen it. 9 times out of 10, it's those who choose to live on the edge of the promised land. They don't want to fight their battles of addiction. They don't want to fight the battles of bitterness. They don't want to fight discouragement. They don't want to fight the giants. They don't want to fight their giants. They're content with being saved out of Egypt. They've come through the wilderness. They've seen how God can provide, and they're cool with dwelling on this side of Jordan. They don't want to fight. They don't want to have to deal with that. They're the first to fall. They're weak spiritually. They're not in the promised land with the other brothers and sisters that are fighting. They've got no support, only from their own choosing, because they choose not to be supported by being part of the body. They're the first to fall. And it's sad, and I'm not rejoicing in that, and I am discouraged and frustrated when I see that, because the encouragement is, come on, come across Jordan. There's people that also want to fight with you and fight the battles for you. And God's there. His presence is there. They were the first to fall. Reuben, Gad, and half-tribe of Manasseh. Now that is not the goal. The goal is not to wish that they fall into captivity first, but is just how it worked for Israel. They didn't want to go over and fight. They discouraged other people by doing that, making that decision. And they angered God, and ultimately they were the first tribes to fall. Their decision to do that affected their children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, way far down the line, farther than what they could see. Ready to cross Jordan? 3 things. 1, follow the leader. When God moves, you move. Follow his presence, his promise, and his provision. When God moves, you move. Number 2, don't discourage others who are moving forward for God. When you lag in fear, when you won't go across Jordan and fight the battles that God's asking you to fight, whether it's against your own lustful flesh, whether it's against addiction, bitterness, whatever it is, you think it's just a personal choice. I'm not going to do that. When you choose not to fight with God's people, you stay behind, and it's discouraging. And then number 3, don't get discouraged by others who don't choose to fight. Okay? My dad would say this, if he said it once, he said it a million times. Your response is your responsibility. Your response is your responsibility. I can't control what people do. I can't control what people say. I can't control if bad things happen to me. All of these things. I can't control any of those things. The only thing I can control is my response when it happens. So when it comes to getting discouraged by others, don't, eyes on your own paper, right? Eyes on your own paper. Because ultimately you can't, Joshua, he understood this principle. He wasn't going to force Israel to do anything they didn't want to do. So what did Joshua say? He says, as for me and my house, we'll serve the Lord. We're going to go across. If you want to join, follow suit. If not, it is what it is. Like the story of Gideon, God didn't need 10,000 men. He didn't even need 300. He just needed 1. He just needed Gideon to see God, the enemy as God saw it, to see him as God saw it, and to see the battle as God saw it. The battle was the Lord's, always was the Lord. And it was going to be the same here in Jordan. Are you ready to cross Jordan? Heavenly Father, I ask that you would give us strength to fight the battles that you've asked us to fight. It's never comfortable. It's never honestly our first choice. It is easier to stand on the sidelines and not to deal with the things that you've asked us to deal with. But God, for the encouragement of others and for the victory, I ask that you would give us strength to cross Jordan every day. We pass from death into life. We follow your presence. I ask that you would give us strength to cross Jordan, to fight the battles that we need to fight alongside those that are struggling. Lord, you told us to bear each other's burdens. It's not always fun, but it's needed. I ask that you would give us encouragement as we do that. Help us not to fall behind in fear, but to follow you by faith. Thank you for meeting with us and speaking to us. Thank you for your word, how it's endless and its truth. I ask that you would help us to not just be a hearer of the word this morning, but to be a doer as well, and to follow you, to move when you move. Be in the next hour. I ask that you would be with those that are still coming yet, that you would open their hearts to receive your word this morning. We ask it in your name. Amen. You are dismissed.